Strength in martial arts is not confined to bodybuilding as many believe. Instead, it is forged on a series of training rituals focused on precision and balance, promising results beyond imagination. Welcome to Martial Road, a journey through forgotten techniques, forbidden moves, and the untold power of martial arts. Endurance, resilience, and core building are the holy trinity of martial arts excellence. In the past, ancient monasteries and sacred dojos taught these traits using more specific types of training, focusing on strengthening the core and building strength in specific muscles to exert explosiveness and raw power. Just how vital are these trainings for a fighter? What really separates brute strength from core power? Join us as we unveil 10 strength training techniques every martial artist must learn. 10. Iron core training. Whether you're a grappler, a striker, or a thrower, the concept of martial arts has its foundation rooted in strength. It doesn't matter if the attacker opts for a life-snuffing strike or a submission attack. A strike from the core hits differently than a strike from mere arm muscles. The sensei gata in ancient Japanese dojos and leading monks in monasteries unlocked the key to striking venomously with real strength generated from the core. Hence, they enforce the deep horse stance, where the trainee takes a wide leg stance, stretching farther than the shoulders, and the knees are bent forward. This stance, held for a few hours every day, tightens the core and dispels energy around the torso, hips, and leg muscles. In modern martial arts strength training, the deep horse stance has been largely replaced by planking, stability drills, and barbell squats, creating an iron core, much like the ancient dojo masters preached. For a martial artist with such intense training sessions, every strike, whether a jab, a punch, or a kick, comes like thunder from the raging storm sitting deep and still in their core. 9. Explosive chain training. In most martial art forms, strength and speed go hand in hand. Even in Tai Chi, the acclaimed peaceful form of martial arts, an explosive chain reaction is expected at the climax of a fight. But how does a fighter attain such a level of competence and explosive speed? Fighters looking to end a contest in seconds require sped-up action, but sometimes speed does not particularly amount to maximum damage if the strength does not match the speedy delivery of the strikes, which could be repeated punches to the torso, the head, or other vulnerable spots. To attain the speed that matches the force of the strikes, fighters are trained to develop their fast-twitch muscle fibers, which contract quickly and powerfully. The neuromuscular adaptation and the improvement of nerve and muscle coordination increase the fighter's reaction time and speed in attack and defense. In modern martial art forms, the training ritual requires a combination of grit and perseverance, as the fighters are told to repeat reps of plyometric push-ups, jump squats, and medicine ball throws to awaken the fast-twitch muscle fibers, and train with wooden dummies, or sometimes human sparring partners, to see how much speed they can generate while simulating a heated battle. However, make no mistake, explosive speed is not the same as the chaos you might find in a street brawl. It requires more technical empathy, where the hips, torso, and arms move in kinetic unity, releasing power from a core and feeling it rush through the strike before it lands in one swift motion on the opponent. 8. Resistance flow shadowboxing. In every form of martial arts, striking the opponent in an effort to end a contest as quickly as possible requires the ability to control and master resistance. Whether the fighter is trying to throw a jab, a kick, or a quick punch to a vulnerable spot, the desired effect is only ever achieved by how much force is behind the strike. Old dojo sensei gata and monks from ancient Chinese monasteries, who were avid practitioners of martial arts, trained resistance by deploying some rather tedious training rituals, which required insane levels of devotion, grit, discipline, blood, and sweat. The samurai wore tetsu gata, iron sandals, every day for many years, using them for everyday tasks, including running, walking, and more importantly, training, which helped keep their balance, power, and strength perfectly measured. However, improvements in modern-day martial arts have seen the world of martial arts shift towards the use of resistance bands and weighted gloves, replicating the old ways of the samurai without compromising fluidity and precision. 7. The breathing forge. In martial arts, breathing exercises are deemed an essential part of fighting. While breathing techniques are not as hidden as portrayed in Hollywood fiction, certain martial arts clans in China and Japan keep their breathing techniques a secret, especially since they consider them a pathway to opening the ki, a channel deep within the human core that helps generate internal power. Ergo, when the ki is opened, the strikes are different, faster, and more decisive, and can actually end a fight before it even begins, a real weapon of bodily destruction. However, some of these old dojos did train students on these breathing techniques and have been handed down into modern-day martial arts. For some context, in a long fight when fatigue inevitably sets in, clawing hard at a fighter's resilience, they rely on diaphragmatic drills, inhaling and exhaling in their own rhythm, opening their ki or chi by allowing the air into their lower abdomen, oxygenating the blood, and flowing in a motion that correlates with their breathing system. The unification of breathing and movement creates a perfect flow, sinking every strike to the core of the attacker. They become the ultimate weapon, as calm as still waters, yet sharp as a whip. 6. The mountain grip. Martial arts like Judo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu mostly have techniques that require the attacker to pull the uke in proximity, grabbing them by the lapels and throwing them. While these moves appear simple on the dojo mat, the executions are most definitely brutal. Ergo, only specific training techniques are employed to develop the perfect strength in the attacker's fingers, rendering every sweep, joint lock, or grab almost impossible to break free from. Training the fingers and the entirety of the hand into becoming unpleasant for an opponent was not an easy drill in ancient dojos and monasteries. They had a precise ritual of crushing stones with bare hands, tugging a rope tied to a tree, and digging holes in the ground with their bare hands, shaping their bodies, at least a part of them, into the perfect weapon. However, new martial arts trainees have developed easier training secrets, including towel pull-ups, gi drags, thick bar deadlifts, and farmer's carries, which create beastly strength in the fighter's fingers. Once their grip is unbreakable, every fight is a mismatch. 5. Isometric lock power training. A weak grip in sports like mixed martial arts or MMA and wrestling reduces any chance of a win or even a professional career. As it appears, having a beast grip doesn't only help you open a honey jar, but it is just as helpful in grabbing and throwing an opponent, putting them to sleep in an armbar, or just showing off and throwing them over your shoulders. Isometric training has long been practiced in ancient dojos, where the sensei gata teaches how to contract muscles without any external movement. For example, they could press against immovable objects, such as a tree or a wall, pushing hard against it until they exert so much strength that they become immovable themselves. Modern-day martial artists practicing grappling attacks and defense train with dumbbells, holding them in an extended arm without moving them back and forth. This still movement of contracted muscles creates the resistance needed to execute a pull on the opponent without falling over yourself. This fearsome strength makes you an immovable object, applying unstoppable force. 4. Bridging and frame control. Grappling is a decisive action in most fighting scenarios. Hence, the counterattack training, such as bridging and frame control, is just as crucial as executing the action in itself. In martial arts sports like Judo, Russian Sambo, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where grappling is a recurring theme, the attacker, with superb upper body strength, primarily uses the opponent's body frame as a bridge to spill them over their own body and onto the mat. Bridging is largely about calculating angles to negate and counterattack, much like geometry, rather than relying on brute force. Ancient masters of this practice understood the importance of forging a fiery, straining regimen that helps steel the opponent's body, using hip thrust to build tension in the spine and ribcage, making them immovable. Immediately, this forces the opponent's body into an immovable kinetic cage, allowing them to create separation and counterattack with a punch or a quick jab to the throat or groin, thereby disorienting the attacker and launching a move of their own. 3. Centerline ritual. In martial arts, some techniques are specifically designed for throwing an opponent, particularly in throwing-based martial arts such as Judo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. While there is a mostly intense focus on training the fingers to gain exceptional gripping strength, and rightfully so, the old masters of the art had a centerline ritual that helped them tip the fight in their favor. The regimen was simple yet effective. From the crown to the sole of the human foot, The human body possesses a center of balance that keeps us balanced, prevents us from falling over while walking, or helps maintain equilibrium in weight distribution in a squat or a one-legged stance. However, professional martial artists train consistently to tip that centerline balance in the opponent, disrupting the interconnected motion in the human body, forcing a loss of balance and throwing the opponent without applying brute force. Imagine removing the moving centerpiece of stacked domino chips. It comes crashing down with little to no effort. That's precisely what a centerline disruption training achieves. 2. Rotational power craft. In throwing-based martial arts, one of the first few techniques, albeit underrated, that is taken into consideration is falling. First, you learn to fall, meaning that you surf a throw and study the spinning motion that comes along with it. Spinning and rotation in a fall is the heartbeat of throwing in martial arts like Judo, as the attacker tries to take all the leverage required before sending the opponents flying. Sacred dojos in the past trained with swirling staffs and learned to use water motions, mastering the art of spinning, twirling their staffs, and twisting their trunks. However, modern-day martial artists use medicine balls to shape the spinal torque and sculpt the hips to aid rotation. At this point, the body becomes the ultimate weapon, almost like a string or a coil, which, when done perfectly, could send an opponent flying using only technique and precision without taking too much from your core strength. 1. The ground to sky lift. In strength training, especially in martial arts, power in the biceps and the triceps is essential for lifting and carrying. Sports like Aikido and Judo have always displayed a show of force with a lift. The forbidden kata guruma move in Judo requires the torii to lift the uke over his shoulder and toss him backwards. Imagine the sheer strength needed to pick up a full-grown man from his hips. Wild, isn't it? Ancients trained lifting sacks, stones, and logs of wood as makeshift weights to practice a ground-to-sky motion, strengthening all the parts of the arm. However, in recent times, modern-day martial artists have begun to prefer using deadlifts, cleans, and sandbags, practicing a lift and throw technique. Over the years, the regimen has proven helpful in building the perfect one-man army. However, as much as these training rituals create the perfect fighter, they also demand balance and control. Would you walk the treacherous road of discipline and training if it awakens the fighter inside? On Martial Road, we follow those shadows. Remember to subscribe, like, share, and see where they lead.